welcome to the Tamari Show, where we keep it real on the mic, making inspiring choices. So today's guest is a counseling psychologist, life and wellness consultant, and coach, Dr. Kayla Harris. Hello, Kayla.
Hi, nice to see you. Nice to
You
see everybody.
too. It's been since undergrad, university.
Yes. I don't want to say no years, but it has been. It's definitely been over 10 for sure.
You're
Well,
right about that. So
mm-hmm.
exciting that we shared sitting in the classroom and now we're on the camera. So it's just amazing to keep in touch with people that you make connections with.
Yes.
So,
Thank you so much for inviting me to your platform and spending a little time with me. I think your motto and theme is just amazing. So I want to be a part of the inspiration. So thank you.
yes, ma'am. So I know my audience is ready to know who is Dr. Kayla?
Whew, I'm still trying to figure that out, y'all. I am still trying to figure that out. So, from what I hear, this is a platform I can just be completely 100%, and I can just be down to earth and be myself. So, I guess if I had to say, who is Dr. K? I am super fun. I am committed to destigmatizing mental health in the Black American community in particular. I am faith filled. And I really just try to take very broad concepts and help people see how psychology and sociology apply all the way around. So, I'm a servant leader. I love to do things outside. If I'm at someone's wedding, I'm likely going to be the person that turns into a hostess without a title. I just love to serve and love to support people. So, at the core, that's who I am.
Well, that is beautifully said and simply amazing. So I did a little research on you,
Oh,
and
wow.
you are every young girl's dream idol. You're the type of woman that young girls look up to and say, because of Dr. Kayla, I can be whoever I want to be.
Oh.
So this episode is My Mental Health Matters. So I'm gonna go ahead and step right into it. So what is your calling in psychology?
What do you mean?
Just what you feel like you were made to
Ooh.
do in psychology to help
So
others.
I would say I'm made to break limitations, right? I think everyone says, okay, if you are a psychologist or you go into this field, clearly you have to get a PhD and you have to do all this kind of stuff. And maybe you need to see clients one on one or you need to do this. And I'm just like, why do I have to do one thing? I can do all of these different things. And to be quite honest, what I thought I would be doing and how I thought I would be doing it, it is completely different now. And I'm just kind of like, I'm walking this faith life. It's just going wherever it takes me. I was in the military and I transitioned from the military in November of 2019. And since then, I actually, a whole like slow down and shut in happened for the whole world. And so that gave me some time to really just prioritize what I was trying to do. And actually, I got to prioritize some things with my family that needed to be handled and taken care of. And that taught me a lot about myself and just who I am and kind of shifted my trajectory a little bit. And so now I am kind of working independently and reestablishing, reorganizing, restructuring my independent kind of business and consulting practice. And one of my giftings is teaching. I absolutely am called to teach. I everything becomes a teaching moment. So I love to help people see how things relate to them and help people become who they're supposed to be.
And I mean, no words. It's easier said than done. I can say that. A lot of us when the pandemic hit, it was kind of like God was telling us, now is your time. That stuff you say you never have time for, now is your time. So that um, sends me to the next question. What process did you take to get to where you are?
Okay. So, I think my process is a little unique in some ways. I used to do some career counseling for folks, and so I can tell you, not everyone kind of knows. Some people know that okay, I want to do this when I grow up, but for me, I remember exactly where I was. I was at the beauty shop because for Black women, that's a really big deal with our hair. I was at the beauty shop. I'm from kind of like the West Side, which usually is somewhat of an impoverished area. I was underneath the dryer because I was cold. I was reading a Jet magazine, and most of you young folks don't know what a Jet or an Ebony magazine is, but they used to have these physical magazines at the hair dryers and things at the hair salon, and you can just kind of read through. And that was a lifestyle magazine for many Black folks, and so I was there. And honestly, at that time, I couldn't say that I knew what it was, but I got this unction while I was going through the pictures, and I was like, man, there's something with Black folks that's missing. There's some sadness that I'm seeing. And I think I saw someone in there who did kind of like media training. And so I started using real encyclopedias, something else that kids don't really know about, but like, he had the white books. I pulled those things out. And at age 7, I decided I wanted to be a psychologist. So I researched on dial up computers, what that needed to look like, what the process. So I knew by age 9, I was going to have to get a PhD. So that has always been the plan. That was the plan. My family, my mom was not very supportive. She was like, "You need to be a doctor." I was like, "That is a doctor." She was like, "No, a real doctor." And I think that speaks to the point that Black people don't really know what psychologist is. They don't think that that's like a thing that we do. We kind of have these buzzwords now, and people are kind of saying that they use, but they don't actually know what that looks like. They think it's a couch. It's not a lot of any of that. And so I did undergrad, and actually I started undergraduate in New Orleans and did a couple years there. And then Hurricane Katrina happened. Then I ended up transitioning to the University of Memphis where we met. And I spent a few years there and then graduated. And there I actually double majored in psychology and sociology because one, I thought psych classes were super boring. And sociology for me puts things into context, and it thinks about society as a whole. It thinks about family, not just the individual. So while I want to understand the individual, I didn't want to be limited. I also studied Spanish and got, a degree in that. And so then from there, I went to New York, and I got a couple of master's degrees out there. And I kind of really came into my own coming from the South up into, New York, and seeing all these different cultures that I had never experienced before. And then from there, I went to Pennsylvania State for my PhD in counseling psych. And then and while I was in that program, I actually joined the military. I commissioned into the military as an Air Force officer. And I was a part of the Health Profession Scholarship Program, which is highly, highly, highly selective. Um, and it took me 2 years to make that decision because I like to be intentional. And it was right after the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And for me, I felt like they tell military service members like, "Oh my goodness, you are, you're just a number. We're all the same." But I was always thinking, we're not just that. You are a mother, and you are also this racial identity. You're also this ethnic identity. You're a man, and you're also these other kinds of things. And you are navigating all of these identities. And what does that look like in that space? And also, I know this is a long answer to the question, but I just want to give some context, even for the military service of it. But I knew that there's less than 10% of the entire military force that are officers, and less than 1% are actually Black officers. And if you begin to break that down even into Black American and other racial dynamics and other racial groups, the numbers dwindle even more, and we don't even have the data to support any of that. And so for me, being there, folks were like, "Oh my goodness, I mean, once word got around, I couldn't even have any friends because everybody was like, oh my God, there's finally one. And in all of the places that I was always the only Black psychologist, the only Black woman psychologist. And I think I came across one Black male psychologist. And so I knew that it was going to be a sacrifice, but somebody needed to see me in that space. And so I decided, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to commit to this. And then I transitioned out. But actually, when I transitioned out of the military and I'm still in process, Black people tend to go to their primary care providers for help instead of going to psychologists because they don't really get it. So in order to counteract that, which I thought about, well before I even got to University of Memphis, I got into a program, a postdoctoral master's program in clinical psychopharmacology, so that as a psychologist, I would also be able to prescribe medications and be able to work with Black folks. So that's kind of like a 5-year plan. I'm still in school for that. I'm kind of on a hiatus for right now, but I start back in January. And so I just want to be able to offer wraparound services to Black folks however I can, and to all people. Honestly, it's not just this one particular population, but I do know that this population has some very unique needs. So, long way of answering your question, but I like to be very thorough in the process because it's been over 16 years. So,
Amazing. I mean, you have basically had your foot in a little bit of everything that has prepared you for right now. And that goes to show that, no process is simple, no process is easy. There's always going to be detours, wrong turns, and you just have to figure out and get right back on the path.
mm-hmm.
You you're an inspiration. And again, that's what this show is about. Like, you inspire others that just because we are African Americans does not mean that we can't become psychologists. African American homes don't talk a lot about psychology. It's kind of just a question answered and then it's pushed under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because, well, from my point of view, I feel like it's not because they don't want to talk about it. It's because they're not educated enough on it to fully explain to us what it really is. But simply amazing.
And honestly, when you're trying to survive and just exist on a day to day, you don't have time to do inner work. I don't have time to think about the whys. I need to eat. I need to be able to make this money so I can do this. And so I think in many ways, historically, being able to go to therapy, being able to seek some level of a resource and spend, 50 minutes in a session or even 30 minutes in a session, that's a privilege in many ways. And so and even in terms of time and getting there, in a lot of offices, you got to get there. They're not in your local communities. It can be expensive sometimes, but now things are shifting. We have this new field of coaching, which is quite different than therapy. And folks are just trying to get the language. And so I'm happy that we are moving forward, but also a little bit nervous because when people don't know what to look for, they can easily be taken advantage of. And unfortunately, everybody um, is not concerned about the well-being of others. Some people are just trying to get a coin. And I will tell everybody, this is not the career you get into if you are trying to make a coin. While you can probably, be successful in some areas, being a helper is a huge, huge, huge responsibility. And you need to be whole before you do any of this type of work.
Yes, preach. Yes, I totally agree. And just wrapping up everything that you said, I actually seen you on an interview podcast on Unwind with Tasha K, and y'all were talking about mental health. And I was like, she's got to be on the show. That's something that I wanted so that you could come on here and educate and advise and encourage others to pay attention to their mental health. A lot of times people don't um, realize that they have mental health issues. And so it's something that's kind of pushed under the rug. Going back to what we were just talking about, in our homes growing up, it's something that we didn't talk about. It was pushed under the rug. So we're just kind of doing what we were taught. Um, go into mental health. Your Facebook background caught my attention with how to process emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain how to notice it, how to name it, how to feel it, and
Yes.
relax into it?
Yes. So the first thing I would say is people are, so let's say that you feel uncomfortable saying mental health, okay? And I don't use mental illness. One aspect of going into counseling psych versus any other kind of form of psychology, including clinical psych, for me was that we use more of a health and wellness model, a holistic model versus a medical model. So I don't see it as, oh, you're coming in, you have a problem, you have an illness, let's fix it. I see it as this is something that you're experiencing, and you already have the tools, but you don't necessarily know where they are, and we need to pull those things up. And there's a level of resilience. We just need to optimize that, right, and explore. But these are some common issues. Now there are more severe, significant things like if you're hearing voices, and maybe if you're having very vivid dreams, or if you're noticing like really strong shifts in mood. But I try to encourage people, you don't have to say mental health. I mean, you can say mental health, but mental health is included in relationship problems. One of the top issues that people have come to see me about is work stress. We spend a majority of our time at work, and people are trying to navigate what other people are bringing in from their homes. They're trying to navigate how they feel about, they're working with this person that triggers them, or brings up these unresolved issues that they have with their parents, or, are you just had this argument with your child, or whatever the case is, or even, managers and stuff micromanaging them and them feeling inadequate. So all of those types of things, we don't label it. We don't necessarily always say that it's mental health. Even in sports, having to perform in front of a crowd of people, having the expectation that if you do get injured, like your livelihood is on the line. So one of the primary things to do is, one, be okay with just naming it whatever it is. You don't have to classify it as mental health. It can be stress. It can be, and something that I'm starting to also help people shift is just language is so powerful. And you don't have to say, I have anxiety. When you say, I have anxiety, or I have depression, you're owning that as your identity. That's something that you're experiencing, but that's not all, and that's not the total of who you are. And so, say, like, name what that looks like, because depression from one person to another looks different. For somebody, it might be, I have a really hard time sometimes, um, uh, taking a shower every day.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm lying in the bed and it is just really hard for me to wake up. Sometimes I notice that, and you're beginning to kind of notice this, like, okay, when it's raining outside, I notice I feel a little bit down. So that's part of beginning to process emotions, is you have to create and cultivate a level of awareness of yourself, of your body. Oh my goodness, when I'm in this space, I start to notice like my palms are sweaty. I notice that I begin to have a headache. Take a moment to see what's going on in your body. Do you feel tingling anywhere? Do you notice that you're getting hot? Is your heart starting to beat? Are you noticing heart palpitations and it's beating really fast? That's all information for you. And once you know that information about how your body is feeling, how you're responding to things, then you can begin to think about, okay, now what is it about this situation that might be triggering me to do this? And then it takes some thoughts, because oftentimes it's how we think about the situation that begins to bring up. If I know I've gotten in trouble in this space before, anytime this person comes up, I immediately am going to think I'm in trouble, which immediately may start to make my palms sweat. I start to like worry and think through and have, very excessive worry. Like, what did I do? Oh my goodness, I'm running back through everything that I didn't turn in. What did I turn in? Was there a typo? So I start to so I rile myself up. I'm telling myself that I'm going to get in trouble. So my thoughts and how I'm communicating and what I'm saying to myself impacts what I'm feeling. And then my feelings impact my physiological reaction. And now when you come in, I'm already on the defense, so that impacts the behavior and how we're interacting. And you're like, I was just coming to see if you wanted lunch. And I'm like, but now you felt that, maybe that energy, or you felt whatever was happening in that moment, and now you're offended, and now we've miscommunicated, and now that's impacting, now you're going to talk to someone else, and I'm going to talk to someone else, and now everybody else is in the conversation. That's all mental health, and that's just at work. So imagine doing that with your partner. You created this whole narrative in your head about they didn't answer your phone call. You created a whole narrative, and then that made you start to feel things, and then you started thinking back to a past relationship. So mental health literally is something that everybody has. It's how we navigate it, is how we understand ourselves, and is what we do in order to just be productive, and manage it appropriately.
You just helped me out because you named some things that I wasn't aware that I was doing, and you helped me realize how a situation of just saying let's go have lunch has escalated to something more. That Dr. Kayla, thank you, because you're helping me out. I mean, it starts with a conversation,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't believe that knowing how to communicate properly is important. It helps in a lot of aspects of our lives, and mental health is serious, and
Yeah.
it's something that has taken the forefront since the pandemic. And it's my job, just to inspire somebody, to interview people like you, Dr. Kayla, that can help us in the areas that we're not aware of, that we could be suffering from mental health. And I'm going to take your advice to name it something instead of calling it mental health or I have issues. That's a good idea. That
Don't own that. Don't own that at all. It is something that you're struggling with, but it's not a death sentence. It's not a this has to be who you are for the rest of your life. This is not a personality or a character flaw. This is something that you're struggling with, but you can overcome this. You can manage this. Now, it may never, for me, I am somewhat of a perfectionist, and but that can lead me to procrastinating, because the thought of I need to make it perfect and I don't have it in order and I need to see it sequentially in order, I'll just be like, you know what, I'm just not going to do it at all. And now I'm putting it off, and that has its own implications, right? And so that's something, it's kind of like a thorn in my side. It's always been who I am, but it's how I manage it. And so it's a part of how I process things. And I've gotten so much better because I have tools, I have wise counsel. I go through a whole like step by step process. What am I noticing? What am I feeling? Let me slow down. Let's walk away for a second. Let me write this down. Let me just do one part of it. And so I've created a plan for managing it. You cannot say you are working on something. This is for everybody. You cannot say you're working on something and not have a plan for how you're going to manage it. Everybody's like, I'm working on it. Are you? Because you haven't made it clear. You haven't made it plain. You haven't set up an accountability person who's going to make sure that you're staying on track. Who's going to offer you, who do you trust enough to give you that type of constructive feedback so that they can support you, and working on that and resolving it. And so it's just so many different ways. I mean, everybody says, oh, we need to communicate, we need to communicate. But how I communicate, I could think I'm communicating effectively, but I'm communicating to you how I communicate, not how you hear things. And so you have to be really clear and come up with a plan for effective communication. What type of questions are you going to ask to make sure that people are hearing your intent and your heart? How are you going to clarify? Are you going to just start feeling guilty and then just avoid? What type of communicator are you? Are you passive aggressive? Are you a assertive communicator? Are you a manipulative communicator? So it's so many different things. And so you do have life coaches that can really help you begin to target some of those things, for more of the kind of like deeper issues, or things that may come from like a traumatic past, or things that require more in-depth, professional, targeted, focus, attention, and time, and that really have to do with the emotional aspect of it. That's when you really want to kind of go to a therapist. Coaches are going to be there to, you have a goal, They're going to help you set up that plan, be an accountability person, and get you. It's very task oriented for the most part. Um, but the feeling aspect and being able to carry that, and then being trained to do crisis management, and to talk, really through domestic violence situations and things that are a little bit more severe and significant, you're going to want to go to a professional, a mental health professional for those pieces.
You're you're helping me. Like I'm blown away because some things that I was going through in my head, just about myself, like you've cleared the way. I just wish I had pen and paper to take notes. Like I need you as my life coach. And it's just the little mistakes or the little things that we procrastinate on that creates bigger issues, and we don't realize, because once we've gotten past that certain point, we're like, how did this become such a big issue? But you just explained all of that. It all makes sense now.
Yep.
The
And
whole
it's all
thing
the
is,
messages you tell yourself. It's the messages that you tell yourself. That's so key.
you are so right. So I've realized, since I started the show at the beginning of this year, a lot of people who were creators before the pandemic, and also the ones
Mhm.
that just started, um, will say that they're starting to feel a certain way. Can you kind of explain, help us understand the connection between social media or being a content creator and mental health? How does that intertwine?
This has been, so that is something that I spoke about kind of briefly on Tasha K's podcast, but it's evolved since that time. Just, so I'm a big commentator. So if you follow me on Twitter or anything like that, like I comment, I watch a lot of reality shows, but everything that I watch is all informational for me. So I never just watch a show and it's just pure comedy. I'm watching a show and I'm trying to understand how people relate. And for these content creators, and just even some of the comments that I see, following certain hashtags, there are a lot of cruel people out there. And there, and in social media, people can really hide behind a persona that they have developed, that they've created. They can distance things. They can have a whole podcast and never show their face, right? It's so many different. It's so many different pieces and that's not to say that it's not legit. But what I will say is social media has created this false sense of reality that really doesn't exist in many ways. Like people are really trying to survive. And once, okay, now we realize that we can make money doing this. So the stuff that's really happening with us, we need to put that off because we need to be able to get this. Or it's all about the perfect video. Or, now everyone, especially during the past 2 years when nothing was open, folks were online and they were looking at everything and noticing everything. And what I notice is that so many people are projecting how they feel about themselves on other people in the comments and on the content creators. So I think it's kind of like this mix. Like the content creators are not being their authentic selves, but they also don't have the space to be their authentic selves. And then the people in the comments want people to be authentic, or so they say, but then they don't accept them for being authentic because they have this expectation that since you're there, you're supposed to be the model. And now we've idolized these folks that are regular people, that may have had overnight success, or something went viral and they weren't whole and prepared to deal with what came along with that. That goes along with any of your creators, any of your artists. That goes along. I mean, your celebrities, your actors, your athletes. Just think about the Olympics this year, and people coming out and talking about mental health and the expectations from the reporters and how the media is spending things. I'm thinking through like Nicki Minaj's situation that's happening right now, and so a huge. I think one piece of my calling, just to even tie it in to what you talked about, what you asked me earlier, is to really take these pop culture kind of constructs and concepts and apply mental health to it, and to destigmatize mental health as we're talking about it, because psychology is in everything. It 100% is in everything. Whether I'm doing a diversity, equity, and inclusion training for a Silicon Valley, tech company, or if I'm doing a podcast, or if I'm working on a group, or if I'm teaching a sociology class, at a community college. Honestly, these constructs, they're embedded in everything: who we are, how we relate to the world, how we understand what we're seeing in the world. What have I put on display? How am I performing in the world? What do I think other people think of me? And we're navigating all these different things. And so now creators are living for other people instead of living for themselves, and they're not getting the support and the help that they really need. And they also don't have the space because they're being monetized. So every day you got to put up content. I hate posting on IG, not because I hate post. Honestly, I don't like the requirement of having to post every day. And I see all these people and, hustling, and I just don't like selling like that. I don't want to feel like I have to be in the shuffle and the buffle. And I think even people that are at home, they feel like they have this fear of missing out, or they feel like I'm not doing, comparison is a calling killer. And people need to be mindful that what you see isn't always what it is. So believe half of what you see and probably none of what you hear in many different ways. And if you haven't been able to check the evidence and seen this person in multiple different places and multiple different capacities, and they've been consistent and shown up consistently in a lot of things, and you have been able to kind of check your own discernment about who these people might be, I don't know why so many people are taking advice from people that aren't credentialed or qualified to talk about it. So that's for the content creators, as well as for the community that's watching. And so I encourage everybody, just do your own work. Do your own work to make sure that you're clear about what your standards are. So if something that you're watching doesn't align with your standards, or something in the comments, as a creator doesn't align with what, who yourself to be, it really won't have the same impact because you're very clear about yourself. And nothing else that anybody says will offer any type of validation one way or the other.
It's I have no words because you really don't know. And like you mentioned, if you don't do your research and you're just saying, oh, I need to be like that person, or oh, I can do that better. It's not a comparison. Um, do your research, learn about what you're really getting yourself into. Then that would better prepare yourself for everything that's coming with it, because anything, like you said, can happen overnight. And if you're not mentally prepared, then what's the outcome of it?
And I
You're really helping me today, because there's a lot of questions that I had, and it's just a
I
simple
want
step back and understand,
yes,
and
yes.
think about it from a point of view of, were you mentally prepared for this to happen?
Yes. And I want to, I also want to offer this. I am not crazy. We all compare and contrast in different ways. But I think there's a very thin line between envy and so I stroll through the explore and discover pages, you know what I'm saying, and see what it is. And but when I see something or I see someone that they have things, I'm just not a materialistic person like that. I don't really like a lot of things. There's one thing that I want in life, and that's one pair of Louboutins. That is it, Louboutins. But that is like the one little thing that I kind of want that brings me joy. So when I see other people with them, again, this is controlling. I don't have this envy or this jealousy or, and I'm so clear and so okay with where I am in my process and what my finances look like and what my goals are. Because when I see these things, I don't know what it took for them to get those things. I don't know what it's like behind the scenes. I don't know if they've rented these things. I don't know. So when I see the things, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's really nice. And I might be like, okay, this is what it is. I see a lot of other psychologists. A matter of fact, I have so many friends that I feel like I've really not done anything. I felt like I've been kind of stuck in the same place. And when I sit back, I'm like, I ran my race. I've done these different things. So maybe I don't have it like this person, or maybe I'm not, being invited to write this research paper or be on this platform or do this thing. But that's not, we are all called to different things, and we're all called to different things at different points. And for me, getting myself together in the dark and preparing for moments that might highlight things is so much more important, because I don't want to elevate to a level that, one, I don't have enough knowledge to be in that space. Two, I don't want to get anywhere where I'm still developing because my character won't sustain me there. So I rather do all my stuff while nobody knows me, while I'm able to go to the grocery store where people, don't recognize me, because there's still a level of privacy that's safe for me. I don't have to worry about doing this and that. And I appreciate that. I also don't have to worry about getting robbed in that same way, or having stalkers in the same way. And so, you're looking at these things, but you don't know what it costs. You don't know what the sacrifice is. And so I just encourage people to, when you see it, don't envy that. Don't be jealous of it. Maybe acknowledge, like, oh, that's something that I would like to do. And then come up with your plan if that's something that you want to kind of get to that, you know, and trust your process. You don't have to have everything tomorrow. That's half of the process of being you. And what I think a lot of people are missing is self-discipline. You don't, everything is not a yes. Self-discipline, self-control, those are keys to being able to manage and to navigate your emotions. People are like, oh, they made me feel this way. No, 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 no. This interaction brought up some things or triggered some things for you. This interaction brought up some things. You were triggered by some things that you've already experienced in the past. This person and this situation doesn't have the power to actually make you feel any type of thing. The feelings are probably a result of something else. And even in this moment, even the anger, but how you respond to this situation, that's on you. That has nothing else to do with them. So nobody made you go and slash somebody's tires. Nobody, like, I watched Married at First Sight, and it's like, oh, this brought me. Nobody made you like find the beehive. No, no, no. If you watch the show, then you know what I'm talking about. But no, this person, like, you have to take accountability for your process, for how you feel, for healing wounds that you may or may not have known existed, and for taking that minute to be the leader and the driver of your transformational, like, progress and moving forward. I said a lot. I'm so sorry, y'all, but it's so important. I am so passionate about this work. I'm so passionate about people learning and having takeaway and very practical examples to apply, because most of these folks in the media talking about mindfulness and they talking about this and that. And it's a very, like, abstract thing. That's because most of them don't know what they're talking about. So again, that's something that you should know. So if they're using the same word and you're more confused after they've tried to explain it to you, that means they don't know what they're talking about. But somehow they've been selected or they've been elevated to a certain level or a certain position. A lot of the people that are doing a lot of the core work, you may never know their names. It's just like the civil rights movement or anything else. But the work is being done. And there are a lot of people who are public figures that are opening doors for other folks to be able to do the work. So I'm not minimizing anybody's work. I'm just saying, run the race that you're called to run. And if you don't know what your calling is, then you need to start your journey of purpose finding and of finding your calling. And that requires something completely different than looking for that in social media.
Amazing. You have covered it all. Like, I wish I had a pen and a paper just to take notes. You said some things that are honest. A lot of times we're not honest with ourselves. And you've even brought some things to the forefront that helps us understand really who we are. It's just time for us to do some soul searching to understand what our soul purpose is. What are we supposed to be doing?
And you can have many purposes, right? And there are many seasons in your life. If you have children, one of your primary purposes is to parent them. And that means they aren't just growing up, but you are raising them. So you are pouring into them. You may have to put some of your personal dreams and goals in a different direction so that you can cultivate, because now part of your purpose, right? And you can have multiple purposes, but part of your purpose is to raise these two people to be citizens, to be critical thinkers, to be whole, to break generational curses that you haven't quite dealt with, like to prevent them from having to deal with the stuff that you haven't dealt with. Part of your purpose is to heal yourself so that you don't pass that along. So we think we just have these purpose, like purpose is only in the professional aspect, but purpose is in your spiritual development, purpose is in your emotional development, purpose is in your mental process, purpose is in so many your physical fitness, and all of those things work together. If you are heavy and you're eating a lot of fried foods, you're not going to have a lot of energy. Your energy is going to impact your mood. Your mood is going to impact how you think about yourself. How you think about yourself is going to make you want to be isolated. You're going to therefore stay in, and then that's going to create its own wheel of issues. So work on building you. And when you build you, everything else will begin to illuminate, and you'll really be able to find significant purpose, calling, and just be a productive member of society. I just think about like all the people that maybe work at the DMV. If everybody loved working at the DMV and they knew who they were and they were excited, so many people wouldn't have horror stories, because they'd feel like, I work at the DMV. I take pride in this. I feel like my work environment is satisfactory. My bosses, they value me. I feel like I'm contributing to something. I get to help and to serve other people. That's a completely different mindset than I'm just doing paperwork all day. It changes and now you've spent, let not 4 hours at the DMV, you've spent 1 hour at the DMV, and it's a great place to be, and so we are all interconnected and all interdependent, and and we really need to operate as such, because you don't know what people are going through, and you don't know who you're passing by or who you're missing. And so give people the same grace that you want. Give people the benefit of the doubt that they're not coming at you reckless.
Right.
Be communicative about, we teach people how to treat us. Be communicative about what you need from people. Ask people questions before you pop off. There's so many different things that you could do. So I could talk about all these different things all day. I have all different types of tools and tricks and things that I love to share. I really need to start to be more consistent on IG. I don't want that requirement, but I'm working through that. Okay. Because
You
you
can
never
do
arrive.
it. Look,
You never.
someone like me, we need to hear things like this because you've helped me so much. And like you said, we could talk about this all day. And it's just so much that you have to share, and hearing it from someone like you, when little girls look up and say, she looks like me, it all intertwines. And I just want to say thank you for all this information that you have poured into my audience to inspire, to encourage, to uplift. Audience, you should have gotten plenty of nuggets, inspiring nuggets from Dr. Kayla. Dr. Kayla, my audience has fallen in love. And before you go, can you just share with them how they can keep in contact with you? Your
Yes.
social media handles?
Yes, so I am at Dr. Kayla Harris on everything: Twitter, IG, LinkedIn. My website is drkaylaharris.com. I'm doing a complete rebranding. So I got some new pictures and things that are coming out. I'm working through possibly doing YouTube, but just like everybody else, I have some fears. I'm like, what am I going to start talking about? And so I take the posture of being a lifelong learner, and every day I'm learning something new about myself. I am Certain parts of me are dying, and other things are being birthed and being born. And when I leaned in and surrendered to that process, and then I made sure, like, I built me a very solid team of wise counsel, so folks that hold me accountable, give me feedback, give me constructive, make sure that I'm responsible. When I started to do that, I really started to move forward, and that includes doing social media and things of that sort. And so, again, when you follow me on any of the social media platforms, I am not your therapist. Okay. This is just giving some nuggets and some tools. I joke a lot. And I do a lot of pop culture commentary. I watch Love and Marriage Huntsville and a lot of stuff, but that's all just me, just trying to show people how things kind of apply. And then sometimes I'm watching it with y'all like, that was just stupid. So yes, I'm what you see is what you get. So that's me.
Well, Dr. Kayla, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming out here and just sharing um, about what you do and how we can get through the different obstacles, especially during this time. People don't realize we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and we have friends and family that are suffering from mental health and they don't even know it. So you have helped us to understand, to look at the signs, to know when it's time to get help. Thank you so much, Dr. Kayla. I can't thank you enough. And we will be sure to get you back on here.
Thank you all so much for having me. Thank you.
Well, guys, that was the episode of My Mental Health Matters. My mental health, it does matter. And with Dr. Kayla, she has helped me in many aspects of just this episode of giving different nuggets and explaining different scenarios and basically telling us what we need to do. Don't follow the trend, be yourself, know your calling. I just want to say thank you for tuning in to the Tom Marie Show, where we keep it real on the mic, making inspiring choices.